Alright, so we're going to look at dividing complex numbers. So I'm going to make sure I title the top of my page. Today is the 7th. I'm dividing complex numbers. Okay, so we're going to start right here with not a complicated one, but one where we definitely will need to get rid of some stuff on the bottom. We've got 1 plus I over 3 plus 2I. Okay, first of all, we can't have any i's on the denominators of fractions. We have to get rid of them. It's like you can't have square root signs on the bottom, you can't have i's on the bottom. Okay, so in order to get rid of that, we are going to multiply the top and bottom by the conjugate. Okay? And now the conjugate is when we look at the bottom of my fraction, the conjugate is 3 minus 2i. But we can't just multiply it on the bottom, we have to also multiply it on the top. So if you guys remember from the homework last night, we just talked about this. When we multiplied 7 plus I times 7 minus I, we got a number, we just got 50. And we multiplied 3 plus 4i times 3 minus 4i, we just got a number, 25. So that's what we're doing here. So it's not any more complicated than we're going to, again, do multiplication with the box. We're just going to do it twice, so it just feels a little time consuming. So first I'm going to do the top. So I build my box. I've got 1 in I, and I've got 3 in negative 2i. So 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times negative 2i is negative 2i. I times 3 is 3i. And I times negative 2i is negative 2i squared. When we have an I squared, it's the same thing as times negative 1, so this whole thing becomes 2. So my top over here becomes 3 plus 2 is 5, and 3i minus 2i is just 1i. Now we still have to do the bottom. Shh. So we still have to do the bottom. So we're going to go 3 plus 2i times 3 minus 2i. And so this should give us just a whole number by itself with no i's. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative 2i is negative 6i. 3 times 2i is 6i. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. I times I is I squared. So I squared is the same as timesing it by negative 1. So we just have a 4. It'll give you 13, and these 6's cancel each other out, right, when we add them together. So we just have a 13 on the bottom. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to separate it just to show that it's two things together. So we have 5 over 13 plus I over 13. And that's my final answer. Yeah, it just takes a while. Okay. We're going to do some ones that look simpler just to make sure we know how to do them. So most of your problems are going to look like this. Once you start like number 9 down on your homework is all going to look like this. But I want to make sure you know how to do problems like 1 through 8. So I'm actually going to do problem number 1 from your work, but I'm going to do it on this separate sheet of paper so you can see it a little bit better. All right. So we've got 5 over negative 5i. We need the conjugate of negative 5i. So we're going to times the top and bottom by 5i. Okay, this is where we don't need to make the whole box because we're only doing like one term times one term. 5 times 5 is 25, and we have I, right? Negative 5 times 5 is negative 25. And I times I is I squared. And I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So we've got 25I over, this becomes 25, right? Because I squared equals negative 1. So what's 25 divided by 25? 1. So I just get I. So that's my final answer. No, it should be a lowercase one. Because a capital I usually means interest, where a lowercase I like this usually means imaginary number. Because remember, this is the square root of negative 1. Yes, Abby? Yep. So I times the top, 5 times 5I, that gave me 25I. And then I did negative 5I times 5I gives me negative 25I squared. I squared is negative 1, so it became 25. And then 25 divided by 25 is just 1. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, because 25 divided by 25 is 1. You could put 1I or just I. Do you want to do another one like that? What about like, let's do number 5. Okay. So number 5, these are just, you know, the more problems I do, the less you have to do for homework, right? So we're going to go 4 plus I over 8I. Okay, so here's my question. The first thing we need to worry about. Yep, we got to get the I out of the denominator, so we need to know the conjugate. So what's the opposite of 8I would be? Negative 8I. So we're going to times the top and bottom by negative 8I. So right here, this is where you want to think about you're distributing this. Okay? 4 times negative 8 is negative 32I. And then negative 8 times I is negative 8I squared. Okay?
So that would be negative 32I plus.
Negative 32 plus 8. Yep. Right, because the I squared becomes negative 1. Okay, and now 8I times negative 8I is negative 64I squared, which is the same as just 64, correct? Now remember, whenever we do this, we want the I to come second. So you know we're going to have 8 over 64 minus 32I over 64. And now we need to reduce this. How many times does 8 go into 8?
One time.
1 time. How many times does 8 go into 64?
8 times.
8 times, good. We've got 32 and 64. How many times does 32 go into 32? 1. So we can just do I. And how many times does 32 go into 64? Twice. So that's my final answer. So this is just reducing. If you want to use a calculator for that, that's fine. If you put 8 divided by 64 in your calculator, it'll come up with 1/8. If you put 32 over 64 in your calculator, it'll come up with 1/2. Okay, so looking over your work, what's another problem you want me to do? Do you want me to do one like 10? 10? Let's do number 10. So 10 has only one term on the top, I, but on the bottom it has 2 minus 3I. So what is the conjugate? It's where you switch the sign in the middle. So it should be 2 plus 3I and 2 plus 3i. So for the top, we could just distribute, but for the bottom, we're going to have to use the box method. So I'm going to get 2i plus 3i squared. And then the bottom, I'm going to use the box. And I've got 2 and negative 3i and 2 and positive 3i. 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times 3i gives me, am I going too fast? Sorry. Gives me 6i. 2 times negative 3i gives me negative 6i. Negative 3i times positive 3i gives me negative 9i squared, which just gives me 9. Remember, these cancel. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now, remember, we have to change this 3i squared to negative 3. So we're going to list that first. Negative 3 over 13 plus 2i over 13. Remember, we want the i's to come second. That's like the rule. So it should be a plus bi. Where are you getting 21 from? There's no 2i, you mean? If you get 2i over 13 plus negative 3 over 13, then you just have to switch them. Because it has to be, the I has to come second. Please stop whistling. I'm in the middle of recording. I've got like 1 or 2 problems left. That I gotta do. Okay, so I've done one where there's like 1 term on top and 2 terms on the bottom. Is there another one like that you want me to do? Yeah. Do you want 18 or 20, guys? 20? Okay. This is number 20, and I can be done after this if you want. We've got 3 plus 9i over negative 6 minus 6i. So what is the conjugate of this problem? Negative 6 plus 6i. Good. Yep. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to do the top first, and I'm going to make my box. I've got 3 and 9i and negative 6 and 6i. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. 3 times 6i is 18i. Negative 6 times 9 is negative 54i. 9i times 6i is 54i squared, which just turns into negative 54. So then I'm going to put those together. 54, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. Negative 72. And then negative 54 plus 18 is what? Negative 36i. What did you ask, honey? Negative 72. I just added these two together right here. That negative 54. Okay. Yep. And so for this one, remember I should just get a whole number for this one, otherwise I did something wrong. Got negative 6 and negative 6i, and negative 6 and positive 6i. Negative 6 times negative 6 is a positive 36. Negative 6 times 6i is a negative 36i. Negative 6i and negative 6 is a positive 36i, which is good because it means these two cancel each other out, right? Negative 6i and 6i gives me a negative 36i squared, which gives me a positive 36. So then I'm going to add 36 plus 36, and I get 72. So 72 goes under this. So I have negative 72 over 72 minus 36i over 72. 72 divided by 72 is what? Negative 1, right? And then I get negative I over 2, because 36 goes into 36 once, and 36 goes into 72 twice. You could put 1i or just I over negative 2. Because 36 goes into 36 one time, so you just have an I left, and 36 goes into 72 two times. So I'm just reducing those fractions again. I'm just reducing my fraction. So if you put in your calculator 36 divided by 72, it'll come up with 1/2. And I can open the calculators up. All right, do you guys feel like you have enough examples?
Yes.
No.
Sure. Number 3 is different than what we've done. Number 3 is, and it won't take long, negative 2 over I. What's the conjugate of I? Negative I. So we have negative I and negative I. So we get positive 2I over I times negative I is negative I squared, which will change to a negative 1. So we just get 2I is our answer.
That's number 3.
That's number 3.
Did you leave it up there first?
Yep.
Negative 2?
It's positive 2I because negative I squared, so that's a negative times a negative 1 becomes a positive. Okay, so you've got the rest of the hour to work on this. I will open the calculators for you guys.